Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Daniel Abraham, who is also known as M.L.N. Hanover, and half of James S.A. Corey, who is a novelist, a comic book writer, screenwriter, and a television producer. And for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write, Daniel?
Well, it kind of depends on who I am when I'm writing it.
Okay.
The Daniel Abraham writes kind of cerebral epic fantasy. M.L.N. Hanover writes urban fantasy. And James S.A. Corey, which is me and my buddy Ty Franck, writes space opera. So anything in those three genres, those are the kind of the places I've been playing so far.
Okay, so what can readers expect from your newest book?
Well, the newest book is a Daniel Abraham thing, so it's epic fantasy, but it's a little odd. It's a standalone story in a trilogy of standalone stories set in the same city in the same year. So every time through, you're going to see the same city. Whenever there's a snowstorm in one book, there's going to be a snowstorm in all three at the same place. It's kind of a way to explore a different kind of epicness in epic fantasy. This first one is a book that's about grief. It's about grief. It's about loss. It's about growing past loss. And it's in the context of kind of the same sorts of worlds that I loved growing up reading, like the Sanctuary from the Robert Asprin books and the Lankmar from Fritz Leiber, and so it's that niche. It's that niche of fantasy.
Okay, and this is your Age of Ash?
Age of Ash is the title of it. It's the first of the Kithamar trilogy.
Okay, and what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
Well, for me, the thing that brought me to them was they were things that I discovered when I was kind of looking for a sense of wonder and change and possibility, and the other worlds that fantasy literature can open up to you. The things that I enjoyed about it was kind of letting your imagination go to a completely separate space, different place. And because it's dealing with some of the same things you deal with in the real world, it's far enough away you can see them kind of with a sort of a bird's eye view, right? Sort of an easier way to understand some things that are going on in your own life.
Right. So what was the inspiration for Age of Ash?
Well, Age of Ash and the whole Kithamar trilogy really was a long time coming to this one. This one was tricky. I had done two complete fantasy series before this, the Long Price Quartet and the Dagger and the Coin, and I was kind of out of fantasy ideas. And then like several years passed, and I came on this idea of a trilogy of movies that I saw like years ago by Kieslowski, Blue, White, and Red, the Three Colors trilogy. And they're standalone stories. They're kind of set in the same universe. They touch at one point, and they're about grief and love and history. And I was thinking, I would love to kind of riff on that. I'd like to take my responses to what Kieslowski did and these books that I read when I was young, and see what happens when you kind of juxtapose those. You put those together, just what comes out of it. And that's a lot of what the project is now.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of research went into writing these writing the first book and the others?
I have a weird relationship with research. I don't really tend to research things specifically in that order. You know, I know authors who, you know, have an idea and they need to know something in order to make it work. So they go and they learn stuff. I've never been that guy. I've always been the one who I research things because I think they're fun or because I'm interested in them, and then that finds its way into the fiction because I already know it. I've almost never dug into something specifically in order to inform a book or a story. Always the stuff that I was looking at anyway that I thought was cool winds up finding its way into the fiction, sort of in that direction. So the stuff that came into this that I've been looking at sort of and thinking about was the stuff like, how cities get made, how cities change, how architecture learns across you build a house for one thing, and then it gets modified over generations and over generations until it's a different building. Ideas about what the difference is between building in stone and building in wood. What happens to a city when you build something once and it lasts for centuries, and when you build something and it lasts a generation and then must be rebuilt. Those kinds of things were really interesting. I had a lot of conversations with a woman named James S.A. Franck. My buddy Ty's wife is also a Cambridge educated engineer and architect, and she drew the map that you find in the book. That's her work. We talked a lot about those issues of the lives of cities.
Interesting. I've talked to quite a few speculative fiction authors, and they say the same thing. They don't do much research at all because it's all speculative. It's all in their minds.
And a lot of the folks who get into this are already really intellectually curious people. So the people I know who are most likely to come up with the most random, interesting, trivial thing, they're all writers. They're all folks who are like, well, the thing you don't know about Robespierre, no, I didn't know that. We all bring our enthusiasms to it.
Mm-hmm. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out The Age of Ash?
Well, there were a couple of things. Kind of aesthetically, it's hard to write about grief, especially when you're writing in a genre that's traditionally kind of escapist. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah.
It's an escapist genre, and I'm not escaping something. This is a book about actually sitting with loss and grief and dreams that don't come true, and still having that be something that is rewarding for somebody who came there to get away from the world. That's aesthetically that's a heavy lift. And I beg the audience's indulgence. It's part of a bigger thing. Other things will be more like what the epic fantasy is, without any of it actually being exactly. I'm not writing Lord of the Rings here. I'm doing something else. But that part was hard, and also my schedule in the last few years with writing books as James S.A. and writing the television show and producing the television show, there's just been a certain amount of time that's been missing. And then it's been a challenging few years, not just for me, that's the world. Everybody's been going through a thing where, we're all a little spread thin. We're all too little butter on too much bread.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of writing books as James S.A. I'm sure a lot of your fans will want to hear a little bit about The Expanse.
Yeah, that was a great project, right?
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the project itself and how it came about?
Yeah, everything I have ever done professionally that was really successful, that really took off, we just did for shits and giggles, and then something good happened. All of the stuff that I've been, planning the market and figuring out what the angles were, all of that failed. Everything that I did cynically has failed. I was playing in a tabletop role-playing game that my friend Ty was running. He was actually running it up in Santa Fe with a bunch of other writers who were much more established and powerful than me. But I had a newborn kid, I had like a toddler, and I couldn't make it up to Santa Fe to play games. So he ran an instance of this down in Albuquerque with me and my wife and his wife. And I was so taken with the world building he'd done and the depth of knowledge that he had about this and the story that he was telling, that I said, why don't we write this as a book? I know how to write a book. You have this whole thing laid out. Let's just put it together, and then, we can sell it for a few $1,000 and it'll have been fun. And that was Leviathan Wakes, the first book in the Expanse. And it got nominated for a Hugo. And then we had, as kind of part of trying to sell the book, we had said, and if you like it, if it goes well, we can write more in this universe. And then it was like, oh, they actually want us to write more in this universe. I guess we'd better. So we got a trilogy out of it, and the trilogy was doing well enough that they wanted like a couple more trilogies. So we did those, and then it turned into a television show, and we wound up and having novelists in the writer's room of a television show based on their own work. That's a gamble. That's a terrible idea, really, because it's so much involving taking something that you identify with and ripping it apart and remaking it, and all of the stuff that was just precious to you comes up for grabs again. Fortunately, Ty and I were both, for one thing, we were already used to the idea of collaborating. It's not going to come out exactly the way I would have done it myself, because I'm working with Ty. So I can come out exactly like Ty would have done it because I'm in the room. So just broadening that so that Narain and Dan Nowak and Georgia Lee and just everybody who was in the room also had their voice in it, that was just expanding something that was already there. That was already just, the part where we give it up the ego identification with the story was already in place. So we just broadened that a little bit more. And it turned out we were pretty good at it. So we worked there for the next 6 years.
Right.
And now we got 9 novels and a book of short stories and novellas and 6 so far seasons of television, telling a complete story. And that was huge. That was amazing.
That is great. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, I've got the Kithmar books is a trilogy, right. So there's going to be 2 more of those. And then Ty and I have also, we're under contract with Orbit for another space opera as James S.A. Corey. So James S.A. Corey has a gig writing a very different kind of space opera and a very different part of the kind of the space opera genre that we're going to be turning in. I think we're turning in the first book in October. It should be out next year.
Wonderful. So any bites on another TV series?
We actually have, there's some possibilities. There's some irons in that fire. I'll tell you what, speaking as a novelist and a writer of books and stories, the part where the union health insurance, that's really nice. I really like the union health insurance. So if we can keep that going, I will totally do that.
Great. So what's your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
Yeah, the best thing about writing is the days when it goes well. When you sit down with the keyboard and it just flows. It's just like you're listening to someone tell the story and writing down what they say, and it's so graceful and it's so pleasant, and you feel so confident and you feel so oh, I'm great at this. Those are the days that make it worthwhile. Those and the times when you get someone who you care about, who really likes your stuff, or who compliments something that you did. Though that's very gratifying too. Those are kind of those are hard to top. Those moments are hard to beat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you consider the most challenging part of the whole writing process?
Not quitting. The thing that I have a lot of friends who are kind of in business, and the thing that is the hardest to do is whether all of the bad reviews and the failed rollouts and the million failures that come with the gig, and nobody escapes them. Nobody gets through this alive. It's and I've seen good people, good writers, people who are really, really talented and doing really interesting work, who it's just so discouraging that they found other things to do with their time that hurt less. And building up that callus, building up the thick skin, living your whole life with Goodreads sitting there offering you casual judgment of strangers. It's that takes a toll. You got to manage that. It's dangerous.
I have had so many authors say exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
don't give up.
Yeah, and don't expect when you've done something that succeeds that now you succeed. Right. I mean, I've had my career shot out from under. I'm a guy. I've been doing this for almost 16 years, right? My first book came out like 16 years ago right now. And I've got almost 30 books in print. I've got like 6 or 7 graphic novels. I've got 6 seasons of television that I produced. I've done really well. And I've also had my career shot out from under me twice. I mean, I've also had my editor come to me and say, well, we all really like you, but we're not going to buy any more of your stuff. That's happened twice. Wow. That's just normal. Failure is normal. I have a dear friend of mine, Walter John Williams, who's been writing like top-notch, cutting-edge, interesting stuff since the 80s. I watch his career die every 4 or 5 years, and he's a machine. He comes back every time, but we fail. We fail a lot. We fail often. And the people who get into this thinking I'm going to make it and then I'll have made it, and then that's some kind of permanent thing, they're in for disappointment.
Interesting. Is that why you might have, you might want to change from, say, writing a novel to writing a graphic novel or things like that?
I got 3 names I'm under right now.
Yeah.
I have like 3 more lined up for other genres when I can't sell anymore under these names. It's the game. It's just how this works. And yeah, going with George R.R. Martin. George R.R. Martin was a prince among science fiction writers right up until Armageddon Rag, and then he had to go to Los Angeles and work on Beauty and the Beast and become a television producer for years. And by the time he came back with Game of Thrones, everybody had forgotten that Armageddon Rag didn't do well, and he became a demigod. He had his career shot out from under him a bunch. Everybody does. Anybody who's in this game long enough has seen their career die.
Oh, very interesting. So what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh, absolutely. The adaptation. Watching the stuff that Ty and I did get recreated in a new medium with new rules and a different toolbox, and getting to watch Narain Shankar, who was the showrunner. It was really, The Expanse was his show and we worked on it. Mm-hmm. And he is such a good manager and such a thoughtful artist that I got to see his process. I got to see how he invests in the every step of the creation, and how just incremental improvements elevate the whole thing. And in ways that made me think, well, shit, better get my editing game on for the next book. He's a hard example to live up to. And getting the chance to kind of learn how to do storytelling again a second time, that was awesome. That was great. I don't know if I'll ever get to do it again, but if I did, I would.
That's great. What is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
That you get an infinite number of chances. You get as many chances in publishing. In writing is not actually publishing. Writing is an art. Writing is a craft. Writing is a thing where you make beautiful objects, and you can do that without getting published. You can do that without getting paid. Perfectly legitimate choice as an artist. For publishing, the thing that I've learned, and this goes back to what we were saying, you get as many chances in this game as you can stand to take. You can, as often as you can stand to get back in the ring, you're welcome back in the ring, and maybe it'll work out for you. You get another chance, you get another shot. All it takes is being willing to lose again. And as long as you're comfortable losing again, you can do this forever. So, and if you can't, that's fine too. That's also perfectly legitimate.
So is that your best piece of advice that you would give to other writers, or do you have other advice?
I mean, that's kind of the one for publishing. For folks who want to get published, I would say my advice is expect to fail. Don't worry about failing. It's going to be fine. Everybody does it. The thing that I would say as a writer, as a craftsman, right, as somebody who's making beautiful objects, remember that all of those things they tell you when you're starting off are beginner's advice, and eventually you're going to outgrow them. So, like, I don't know how many people I have seen poisoned by show don't tell. Oh, show don't tell. Oh, don't tell. It's like, exposition is fine. I got a dog here. Yeah, dog. No. Exposition is fine. You can put that in the outtakes too. Exposition is fine. There's a lot of exposition that's good. But bad exposition is bad, and it's hard. And I'm gonna just put her someplace else for a second. I'll be right back.
That just answered one of my questions.
If you look at the great books in literature, sometimes there's exposition. The opening of Christmas Carol is probably a page or two of some of the best exposition in the English language. Nobody went to Dickens and said, "Oh, show don't tell." All of that stuff you have to learn from, and then learn to discard as your art grows. Take the advice and then outgrow the advice. Be prepared to outgrow the advice.
Great. So are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that have helped you in your career?
I'll tell you, the watershed moment for me was when I attended Clarion West. All of the Clarion stuff has been, Clarion West is the one I did. Clarion is good. Clarion South is good. Odyssey, I've heard good things about. That kind of really intense boot camp environment worked well for me. Does not work well for everybody. For some people, it can be kind of punishing. If you're constitutionally suited to it and you're ready for it, there's nothing better. If you're not, and as a professional organization, I think SEFWA is great. I've been a member since I started publishing, and I have nothing but positive things to say about them.
Okay.
And if you can get into the Writers Guild of America for doing screenplays, the health insurance is great.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions about you as a person.
All right.
Let's see. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Well, I spent 10 years doing frontline tech support before I started publishing as a writer. This is my second or third career. I did years as after college, which I took forever in college. So, that's like a student career by itself. And then I was working retail for a long time. And then I did frontline tech support for almost 10 years. And then I published a book. I'm not known for my tech support. Nobody, Googles me to get their Windows NT configured anymore. That's those days are gone. But I came to this late in life, and I did a bunch of other stuff first.
I bet you couldn't even answer some of the questions now.
I really hope I couldn't. I still remember being the emergency tech that weekend and being like hunched down in the alley outside Bert's Tiki Lounge, configuring Windows NT from memory. It was not a pleasant job. I worked for great people, but it's just a terrible job.
Okay. Next question is, what is or are your passions when you're not writing?
A lot of my passions involve writing. I mean, it's reading, watching shows, taking shows apart, talking to my daughter and I will watch movies sometimes and say, okay, where did you lose interest in the movie? What part, where did the momentum go away? How would you fix that? That's fun. When we finished The Expanse, and it was kind of the capstone of this huge thing, I got myself a really nice piano, which I play very poorly. I'm slowly learning to raise myself up from chopsticks. Because it's great because it has no language involved. It's not using any of the parts of my brain that I normally use, and you can tell because the parts of the brain that it does use are tremendously underdeveloped. I'm really bad, but it's a beautiful instrument. So, that's fun.
Okay. Now, what does your writing space look like? And are there things that you need to have with you, like drinks or food?
I have my superstitions about writing, but they're not physical or environmental. My writing space is wherever I am with my laptop. I have my office here. Sometimes I'm here. Sometimes I'm in the house on the couch. Sometimes I'm sitting next to my wife. She's playing Xbox and I'm doing the thing. Wherever. That's the physical thing. I'm not superstitious about that. I do have a thing about word count that confuses and horrifies my friends. In my world, a chapter is 3,000 words long. So if you look at the Expanse novels, all of the chapters in all of those books are within 100, 200 words of 3,000, all of them. If you look at the M.L.N. Hanover books, all of those are 3,000. If you look at the Dagger and Coin books, there are three. I mean, it's just this thing that as long as I'm worried about the word count, the front of my brain, the editing part of my brain that kind of gets in the way, has something to like pay attention to in the back of my head, which actually knows how to tell a story, can just sneak in and actually do its job. That's kind of the ritualistic, superstitious part of my process, but everybody has their own.
So do you prefer music or do you like silence while you're writing?
Generally, I go with silence. I'm kind of a silence guy. I get distracted easily. And if it's something that has lyrics, I'm boned. I just can't. If there are other words in the room, then I'm all of a sudden I'm writing, Guns N' Roses lyrics in my fantasy novel, and it's not going to work. It's just
right. Okay, and one of my questions, we're kind of running out of time here, but okay. One of my questions was you kind of answer, or well, your dog kind of answered for me. Was if you have any pets that either help or hinder you.
I have pets, and they universally hinder me. We have 3 dogs who are loving and sweet and intrusive and self-centered, and they're great, But yeah, you do sometimes have to get the dog's jowls off the keyboard.
And I just have two more questions.
All right,
One is
hit me.
where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I'm going to give a quick plug. You can get you can get Daniel's books at Annie's at 508-796-5613. You can call us and we can try and find Daniel's books and get them for you. And where else can people find your books?
Well, I'm, the usual outlets, the Barnes and Nobles, the Amazons, and there's also IndieBound, which is the kind of website of independent bookstores around the nation that I'm very fond of. And libraries, I like libraries. People, I'm not, as the guy who sells the book, I'm supposed to not like libraries somehow. I don't understand that. I think libraries are awesome. You can pick them from the library.
They are good. They are good. And last question I have is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Well, that's, I'm actually trying to, I think social media is a poison. So I'm still on Twitter. I'm at Abraham Hanover on Twitter. And you can find me there if I'm smarting off in public. Failing that, drop me a line. It's office at danielabraham.com. But I'm hoping as I grow older that more and more of the stuff I have to say I can say in bookstores and less and less.
And your webpage? Your webpage?
There is one. There's danielabraham.com, but honestly, God, I haven't updated that thing in years. I don't even know what it's on there anymore. I'm pretty sure. Just drop me a line. Seriously, better that way.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
It has been a pleasure.
If you ever get to the Boston or Worcester area, we'd love to have you come.
I will stop by. I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.